The Eternal Memory won the Sundance World Documentary Jury Prize for its loving portrait of a journalist coping with Alzheimer's. I speak with its director, Maite Alberdi. I'm Tom Powers, and this is Pure Nonfiction. Maite Alberdi has become Chile's most prominent documentary maker. Her films include Tea Time, about a monthly salon of women, The Grown-Ups, about adults with Down syndrome, and The Mole Agent, that's a comic detective story inside a nursing home. All of Maite's films are characterized by humor and warmth. We spoke on episode 119 about The Mole Agent that went on to be nominated for an Oscar. Her new work is The Eternal Memory. She follows the journalist Augusto Gongora and his wife, Paulina Urrutia, as they cope with Augusto's experience with Alzheimer's syndrome. Augusto once had a thriving career as a television journalist and author of books. During the dictatorship of Pinochet from 1973 to 1990, many journalists were imprisoned, killed, or forced into exile. But Augusto persisted through that era by creating clandestine videos that were circulated on VHS tapes by an underground network. His wife, Paulina, is a prominent actress in Chile on stage and television. 9 years ago, Augusto was diagnosed with Alzheimer's at age 62, beginning with gradual memory loss. When Maite first approached him about this project, he still had a presence of mind. In the film, we see him lose his acuity. Paulina has to remind him who she is and who he is. As Augusto's memory declines, Paulina responds to his vulnerability with immense patience and love. The film premiered at the Sundance Film Festival in January, where MTV Documentary Films bought it for distribution. It's currently playing in theaters and will eventually come to Paramount+. In June, Augusto died at age 71. My interview with Maite took place a few months earlier, so we still speak of him in the present tense. I sat down with her at CPH Docs in Copenhagen. As we began, I was thinking that the best-known Chilean documentary filmmaker for several decades has been Patricio Guzman. He chronicled the 1973 coup against Salvador Allende in the Battle of Chile, and he's lived in exile ever since. Today, Chile has a new generation of directors. I asked Maite to describe the community that helped launch her career.
When I was beginning my career, my cinema school was the first one that was refound. After dictatorship, they reopened, and I'm the first generation to be in a cinema school after dictatorship. So I think that we have like 20 years of filmmakers that learn by their own, and they try to shoot the context and the political situation, like learning by themselves, but without schools that teach cinema. So and Patricio Guzman and Ignacio Agüero, like the oldest generation, have the opportunity to study in the university, and then we have like a big gap of people that learn by themselves. So I am the first new generations that study documentary in a film school, and it's weird because Augusto Gongora, the main character of The Eternal Memory, was the first person that in Chile made a program in TV about cinema and documentaries in the 90s, where there were no school, or there was nobody speaking about culture, like the first years after dictatorship. And he was like my first approach to cinema and documentaries, and that TV program was a school for many people too, to hear about cinema, hear about documentary. But yeah, the generation before than me, it was more political in how they affront reality, because it was more than an urgent way to understand documentary. Like, we need to go to the streets and to report and to show. Yeah.
So he was an actual teacher of yours.
Completely. Like it was like my first idea of cinema, the first conversations that I heard about, art directors, DPs, the word documentary. It was the first time in my life that I heard it in his program.
Can you tell me about your family under the dictatorship years? What was your experience growing up under Pinochet?
Yeah, I grew up the last years of dictatorship, so it was completely different for another generation because I lived only 7 years in dictatorship. So I was a teenager in democracy, so it was completely different for the previous generation of filmmakers too, because um, I I hear only the last years of horrors, but it was more open in the dialogue. The people have more conscious. The people were fighting for democracy when I was like 5 years old, and I was 7 when democracy came. So I didn't feel that pain in my house, but I the only thing that I remember it's that the day that Augusto Pinochet goes out as a celebrate, like a big celebrating day, like it changed the mood of my family in a way.
So you encountered Augusto as a student, and tell me more about that. Tell me more about your experience of him that way.
Yeah, it was amazing because the Chilean TV was capped by by dictatorship, and the day that Pinochet went out of the government, that day that Augusto Pinochet gave it to Patricio Elwin, the first president of democracy, in the studio of the public television was the military, like giving the news, and in the moment that they give it to Patricio Elwin, the militaries goes out of the TV, and Augusto Gongora started speaking to the people in that minute. So he was the face of democracy for all the public television and for all the Chileans, because he was the one that starts narrating that fact and that day, and he worked hardly making clandestine newscasts during dictatorship that for us it's now the only material that exists as an archive of things that were happening that were not in the media because the media didn't report anything. So he made that this clandestine newscast, and they make recording that passes in a house and one copy and give it to another. So that was the only image that exists now from that period. And then he was the face of this public television. His fight in democracy was really to try to give the culture and art programs that we never had during dictatorship in public television, like to change the role of public television since that moment. So I think that he has two roles. The first one was to denounce during the dictatorship, like taking risk, and then to show art, cinema, and literature in the TV, because we never see that openly. And for me, when I start this film, it was very touching because I tried to convince them both to make the film, and Paulina didn't want it, the main character, and he was the one that wanted to do it. And he told us, like Paulina and me, like, I shooted so many pain, so many fragility during dictatorship, so many people opened their house to show pain. So why I'm not going to open my house to show my own fragility? Like, a registry should exist always, even against anything, like the registers should exist. So I have to show this.
So take me back to those early conversations. As I understand it, he started uh, showing signs of losing his memory in 2014. When were you beginning to talk to him, and what was motivating you?
Yeah, I read an open interview that he made the day that he got the diagnosis. He communicated to everybody for the first day, like without fears. And a couple, like 2 years after, or 1 year after, I saw him. Paulina hires me. She was director of a university, and she hires me to make a master class of cine in her university. And I arrived to my master class, and Augusto was sitting in the first line, and it was so weird because I heard so much things of cinema from him, and he was in my class, and it was like, why he's here? And I knew that he has Alzheimer, but I really don't understand it, why she was taking her to my class. And I start my class, and he interrupt and make question all the time, and she allows him. And then I realized the dynamic that she bring him to all her jobs, and they started to be together all day. So he came to my class, and she was not embarrassed if he interrupt and not make the correct question. It was like very normal, and all the environment live with that in a normality that for me was like unbelievable, because I had shoot so many people with dementia in my career, but all of them were completely isolated. And this was like they built a community in job with friends, with a lot of people that were all taking care of this man, and she can continue with her life. And that was the thing that was completely blowing my mind. And in that moment, I start calling them, and I try to convince them, but that was my starting point.
Where is this in relation to you doing The Mole Agent?
It was before start shooting The Mole Agent. And it takes time to combine them, like a couple of months. And I start shooting just after we finished the shoot of The Mole Agent, yeah.
So what was his, state of clarity at that time when he had this conversation with you saying, we should do this?
Yeah, he was completely clear about what it mean the film. I was really clear that I wanted to follow for many years, so probably we are going to see more fragility, more unconscious, and he was like, I'm not embarrassing, I have to show it, like really clear. And he was so clear that he combines Paulina and his daughter and son of doing it. And the good thing, it was so an open question all the time for their family and me, and the question for all of them and also for me was, well, until when? Because I wanted to shoot it like for 10 years. And I said to my producers, like, I don't have a deadline. Like, I don't want to have a deadline, so I don't need to go to finance now this film, because I don't want to have a date to deliver, because I want to be there until the end. But I didn't understand in that moment what was the end, or what was like the end was when he passed away, or in that moment I thought the end is when he didn't recognize her. But that's never really happened until now, that because in different way he still recognized her. So it was like an open dialogue for all the family of that day, but it was abstract, and we were afraid of something that we were not really understanding. And when that day happened, it was so clear for all of us, or for Paulina and me, that it is a day that he say, and it's on the film, like, I'm not anymore. Like, I'm not the person that I used to be anymore. And that moment was like, yeah, he's telling me that this is the point. And it was the first time in 4 years that I feel uncomfortable with the camera there, and Paulina feel uncomfortable. And it was really clear that it's the end of my film, not the end of him and of that relationship, but of me there. So that it's like an answer that time gives to us.
So Paulina begins as a little bit reluctant to be part of this, is persuaded by Augusto's desire to do it. As you went along, you really had to rely on her for a lot of things, for access, and at some point you turned to her to be filming situations. So what were those dynamics like?
It's life. It's amazing how you can construct intimacy with the characters, because at the beginning she has a lot of doubt. I think that the first year of shooting, she was all the time doubting. But when pandemic arrived and she realized it, and I said, well, we cannot continue with the film, because in Chile the lockdown was really hard, like a year and a half with lockdown. You cannot go out at night. You have one permission per week to go out. So for me, it was like, okay, we stop here. And she said, like, no, we cannot stop. Like, send me the camera. And for she, I think that the camera was a company during dictatorship, and I was really lucky because she was an actress. So she's an actress, so she really know how to put the camera. She really has conscious of when you have a scene, and we didn't spoke about which kind of situations. She decided by herself, and after it scenes, she sent me audios in the camera, like, today this happened, I tried to shoot it like this. So she sent me the record. I look in my house, I call her. So we were like doing the film together, and I was really lucky, because I think that if pandemic didn't exist, probably I will never send a camera to Paulina, and I have so intimacy moments that I could never shoot by myself, like at 2 a.m. in the middle of some crisis, that I will not be there. And a lot of people ask me about the limits, like, which is probably you receive a lot of material and you have to put limits of what you show, but really no, because she put the limit. Like, she's the person that most love him in the world, so she clearly decide which things are permitted to show and which one no. So it was not so difficult in that sense.
When I think of your previous films, I think of them being made with a lot of lightheartedness, particularly in Tea Time or The Mole Agent. This film certainly has a lot of moments of laughter and love and compassion, but it's not as whimsical as Tea Time or Mole Agent. And I wonder how conscious of that you were.
Yeah, I don't know if I was so conscious, because I never thought that I will have that crisis, because there are scenes of crisis in this film that I didn't expect to have, because I didn't expect to be there, and Paulina should. I think that the most hardest scenes of the film are shooted by her. It's not by me. So there is a limit of where can I access that it's moved, because she shot it. So, but in a way, in comparison with my previous film, I think that I have the same feeling that moves me to shoot, because when I know them, and until now, there are persons that I really want to share time with them, and I really want to be with them. And even when I am with them in painful situations, they are really in a good mood, and they are really making easy. So it's nothing feel for me shooting so painful as it seems in the paper if you describe the situation. So I have been shooting another films with less painful situations that I don't feel comfortable there, and I want to press a button and disappear and don't be shooting that because I don't feel well. But with them, never. Like, I really want to be with them, and for me, it's a lesson in a way about relationships. Like, they are so good together that people want to be with them, and I want to be there. And I always feel good because they are good. And it's funny because I went with Paulina to Berlin, and she made a lot of Q&As. And when people ask me in Sundance, how is Augusto going now? And I say, he's really bad, he's terminally ill, he's bedridden, he's not going well. And when people ask to Paulina, how is Augusto now? In the Q&As, and she said, he's really good, we are happy together. And it's like, really? And it's like completely different perception. And it's true, like I go, the situation is terrible, but they are happy, and she's happy, and it's really exceptional. I know, like not all the couples have to live like that, but it's a good feeling anyway for me. Like I have the same feelings of my previous film as I lived that situation.
Well, I think watching the film is a kind of like lesson in having a frame of mind to face difficult situations. I want to talk about the metaphorical memory in this film, that the memory that Augusto represents of a political time period. And I want to pick up on something you said earlier about these kind of clandestine videos that he was taking. Can you tell me more about that? Like, what period of time he was filming and how that worked?
Yes. They filming from as soon as Pinochet take the government in 73 until 87. And all the medias were taken by militaries, and he and a group of youngest journalists start to make clandestine newscasts, and they were reporting on everything that was happening in that moment, and they made clandestine videos that they distributed in a clandestine way. So it was VHS that they give hand by hand. So they have a list of people that they give the VHS, and they copy to another list, and they copy to another list. So it was like a very handcraft distribution system of that VHS. So everybody had the VHS on their house, and they return and they copy on the same VHS the next episode. So it was 45 episodes that they made during that period.
And what were the, consequences that they might have faced if they were caught? Or was there a lot of surveillance? Or?
They were really afraid. They lost a friend of them during that period because he was captured in their office, and they live with all the time taking care of themselves but with afraid. And it was risky, I think, all the time, but it's the only archive that we have for that period now. Like,
does a complete set of those 45 videos exist today?
Yeah, they keep the 45, but at the same time, it's funny because they didn't have so much money, so they didn't have so many tapes to record. And Augusto, in an interview, said that he went to record the first Chilean concert that was made in Argentina, like to denounce, and that he was going back after record this concert to Chile, and then he realized that his best friend was killed openly. That is the story that he told in the film about how his best friend was killed, and he has to go to the funeral and shoot and record on the same tape that he recorded the concert. So they lose the concert because they have to record the funeral. So everything was like that. So it's a miracle to have all the episodes now, that they really have conscious of that they were building the historical memory. The other day I showed them the film to their friends that make this newscast with him, and they told us, like, probably this exists because Augusto have the speech of historical memory and the conscious of archive all the time, and he has conscious that he has to hide and everything. And it's funny because at the beginning for me, this film was a film about a love story, only a love story. And everybody told me, well, but you have to put Augusto's past and Augusto's job. It's just not. For me, it's a love story. It doesn't care who was Augusto, it's what they are now. But in the meantime, in the road, I realized that they get in love of a person that have a past, that have a story, and I realized that how concerned was him about memory. And I was almost finishing the film when she has a rat in her home and she moves a furniture and she finds a hole in the wall where he hidden all the tapes and all the records that she didn't knew, that she never say. And there's an important scene of the film where he's speaking about historical memory that appear in the wall. So he has the conscience that he has to hide them. But when that archive appeared, for me, it was like, okay, he's telling me that it's not only about this couple, it's also about Chilean memory and collective memory. And it's about how some things remains in your body until the end. Because for me, he remember a lot of things until the end, like the pains are there. Like he really remember his friend that died during dictatorship. He remembers some pain about the relationship too. Like there is a scene that she asked to Augusto, how many years have we been together? And he say, I don't know, 20, 25, like I have Alzheimer, tell me. And then she said, how many, did we have children? And he said, no, because you didn't want it. And that is true, and was his pain, and he remembered that clearly. So probably he cannot remember dates, he cannot remember numbers, he can forget names, but pains and emotions remains, and you feel that with him.
I want to follow up on your kind of coming around to the idea that there should be a political, historical dimension to the story, because I think for many years, the films that we would see internationally about Chile were very dominated by the politics of Chile. And one thing that felt refreshing in a way, when Tea Time was a real international success, is it felt like symbolically a moment that Chilean filmmakers can make other kinds of films, not just political films. And in the body of work that you've built up until now, politics have been felt outside of it. And I wonder how conscious you were of that, and how conscious you felt about opening the door and letting them in to this film.
Yeah, I think that I was not intentionally don't put politics in my film, because now that in Chile we're discussing about the new constitution the last year, I feel that all my previous film in the topics were in the political discussions of the constitution, like all people pensions, people with disabilities. Like I was representing society in a way, and politics, it's in social issues. So of course I were not making films about dictatorship probably, but about my society. And that for me, it's political, because you see the political issues in micro worlds at the end. Like you see that political decisions in day-by-day situations, and that it's my concern as a filmmaker. How can you see in people and in society the government decisions in a way? So in this case, it's different because you have to take care of the characters that you have, and in this case, to take out that issue, that was the thing that I was doing at the beginning with my only love story. It was to don't see which character I have in front of me, and in a way, this year it's going to be 50 years of anniversary of the dictatorship, and it's a film that came, I feel, with another vision of that, because it's Augusto saying, like, dates, we can make commemorative acts. This year are going to be full in Chile of commemorative acts of the 50th anniversary. But if we are going only to hear numbers, number of deaths, number of years, and we do not hear experiences and stories, and he say we are never going to make our mornings, like we have to construct collective memory from our pains and understand what was that. And I think that this film invites to speak about experiences and not only facts, because facts are going to make you repeat the story. It's like, how are you feeling about that? So I think it's like a good film to think after 50 years how you are going to make commemorative acts. Like, how do you put the point of generations that didn't live that? Like, how do you express generation by generation that pain? And I think that is the question of the film, and the question after many years of that story passed.
Now that you're in a position where you are sometimes asked to teach classes yourself, and you are interacting with a younger generation, how do you think that the generation that's coming up now in Chile looks at the past, or doesn't look at the past because they've got their own present to worry about?
I teach like for 13 years in cinema school, and it's weird because I start feeling a generation at the beginning that really it's think to the past, and then change to a generation that all the stories that they are looking for are in first person, and was really weird for me as a teacher. And I have to put like a request to don't tell personal stories, like please go and then pandemic arrived and they have to make own stories because they cannot go out. But yeah, I feel that in a way probably the new generations feel that the number of films about the past or dictatorship was already did in a way. And yeah, and they are trying to look of other stories, yeah. Or yeah, we change, and you can see that. It's like films about dictatorship, then it's a period in Latin America in general, not only in Chile, to first-person stories about dictatorship, and then the topics completely change.
What are you hoping for, looking for, as this film comes out in Chile and audiences get to see it?
I really wanted to push, like, there's a big discussion now about laws for take cares person that are completely out of society, and the Chilean government is working in that law that it's completely disconnected of dementia law. And for me, I really want to open a discussion of how do we build as the conditions for people that it's taking care of other, that can be a child, an old person, because they really get isolated for so many years that it's not only to give a salary to them, it's like, as Paulina do, like how we all take care with them of the people that they have to take care. Because Paulina always says, like, the only way to evolve as a society is for everyone to take care of another human being in some point of our life. So how do we put conscious of that and to know that everybody in some point of our life, we have to take care of someone. So how do we deal with that? And that is, for me, the questions that I want to put here in Chile. And of course that it's going to be the perfect film for the 5th anniversary and to understand how we build that historical memory.
I want to thank Maite Alberdi for speaking with me. Her film, The Eternal Memory, is now in theaters and coming to Paramount+. You can hear our previous interview about the mole agent on episode 119. I hope you'll subscribe to Pure Nonfiction's email newsletters. We have Producer's Notebook on the business of documentary and Editor's Notebook on storytelling. You can subscribe for free at purenonfiction.net. Thanks to our team, series producer Hannah Nordenswan, marketing manager Bella Racklin, our intern Sahai John, and web designer Cross Strategy. Our theme music is composed by Andre Williams, and our executive producer is Rafaela Nehausen. I'm Tom Powers. Follow us on Instagram at Pure Nonfiction.